homesteading today is going to clean the carburetor on an 009L Stihl chainsaw. I'm going to show you how to take it off, clean it, reinstall it, and adjust it. Here's your air filter. Now that the air cleaner's off, you can see it's all dirty, so I'm going to blow this all out first. Make sure you wear safety glasses. So now I'm going to remove the two screws that hold the carburetor down. I'm going to take this little rubber clip out. This just guides your screwdriver when you're adjusting it, basically. That just pops out. Okay, so now you got to be careful you don't bend the linkage. So we get the carburetor out of here. Pull the fuel line off it. And then you got to unhook the actual throttle linkage. There we go. So it's off. So there. Okay. You want to get a clean surface. So basically, most carburetors are all the same. They're pretty similar. This actually has basically the same size carburetor as a bigger saw. It's just they have a little restrictor plate. It's a carburetor. It is very similar. If it's Stihl or Husqvarna or any of those. So we're going to go through the steps. First thing I do is I look. There's a low jet and a high jet adjustment screw. So I go and I screw in the high jet and count how many turns it takes to screw it in. So 1.5. How many turns? So it's basically 3/4 of a turn and it's bottomed out. So I unscrew it. Okay, so that's what the needle looks like. So I'm going to set that over here, and I'm going to write down H 3/4. It's better with a pen, but I don't have it. So you do what you need to do. Okay, so here, so now this is so your low screw, and don't mix them up because it can be different. Your low screw is 3/4 of a turn from the seated position. I recommend getting a kit, but I don't know, I've cleaned many chainsaws and not bought a kit, and just be careful, and then you can put it back together and it works fine. So it's all up to you, your preference. To do it right is to actually buy the carburetor kit with all new gaskets. That is the correct way of doing things. So now we try to be gentle taking this off. So you got the first cover. You can see dirt in there, so we're going to have to blow that all off. This is the diaphragm. Okay, this is your diaphragm that regulates your needle seat to open to give the saw more fuel or not. So you want to make sure there is no holes in here. So here you got your needle. here's a screw here. You loosen it off and put your finger over it. Make sure that you don't lose the pieces. At a certain point, they will fall out. You give it a tap. You don't want to lose any of these. So you set them over in a careful location and this little spring. Okay, so there you go. There's your passes, where your needle is. Now it's really important, not so much on chainsaws, but on other small carburetors that you clear. They have a removable seat. These don't, but just keep in mind you don't want to be, when you're blowing out your carburetor, blowing the seat clean out of it. Okay, so now we're going to take the bottom cover off. This is your idle adjustment screw. You don't have to even adjust it to do anything. You just remove this. You remove the screw and you pop the cover off. You may have to move the throttle. There you go. So that's the inside of the cover, the gasket. So basically now we're down to the bare carburetor. Okay, you get some carb cleaner. This is what I do. So right now I spray it in all the holes. You spray it in all there. Let it sit for a little bit. We're gonna get the blowgun. We're gonna blow through all the ports. Make sure all these holes are clear. We'll go around to this side where the main needle goes. Pull that out. Blow these. There's a little tiny passage right there. We're going to try to blow that out. Make sure that's clear. We're going to blow in this. Okay. We're going to make sure this is clear. You've blown out all the passages. We're going to reassemble. Okay, so now we're going to put this back on. Okay, so there's that side. Now we're going to put the needle and seat back in. So you got to be very careful you don't lose that spring. Okay, so this little place is where your spring sits. I set the carburetor down. This is the easiest way I found. Now you got to set your needle on the little hook. And you put this back on. There is a little dimple where the spring is supposed to sit on this little arm. There's a little dimple, and you got to make sure it's in there. Okay, so make sure that this little yoke is around the needle, so it'll go up and down, that the spring is seated nicely on this little dimple, and push down gently, and then tighten up the screw that holds it. Okay, and then make sure that the needle moves nicely when it gets pushed. It's really important not to bend this or force it, because that will stop it from actually giving it fuel. Now you got your top cover and your diaphragm. The gasket sits in a nice little tab here, and that little tab fits in there, so you can't mess it up. So you put it in there gently. Then you get the screws. Just put it till snug. Look at the other one. So that one's snug. And then we tighten it. So there you go. Okay, so now we're going to put our screws, now we're going to put our adjustment screws back in. So, your high one, we are going to screw it in, and don't force it. Even with the screwdriver, when you start screwing it in, when it stops, stop. Don't force it, you'll damage the seat. Just go and tell it gently. Bottom's out there. Okay? So now we do 3/4 of a turn out. That is your base adjustment. That's where we start our adjustment. So then screw this one in. So then 3/4 of a turn out. There we go. So there, your carburetor's done. Okay, so we're going to set this over here for a second. Okay, so now I got the linkage for the throttle. I got the carburetor. We're going to have to hook this up. Okay, there. We need to get the gasket in there, and I think the easiest way is to make sure it's lined up before we put the carburetor down. So just set the screws through it that is going through the carburetor. We have the carburetor in place. We're going to evenly tighten up these screws. Don't go too crazy, they go into plastic. And there probably is an actual torque for that, but this is what I do. There. Okay, we're going to give it one more little blowout on top. The fuel line's on. The throttle works. Okay, now so we're going to stick this in. These basically just help your screwdriver go right to the adjustment screw, and it seals it. There's no other point really for that, so we're going to sit that over there. Now, this air filter is really a mess. With air filters, it's really important from the dirty side. You're supposed to blow from the clean side, so you don't shove dirt through it. But sometimes, if you are going, you go right on an angle, so you're not shoving the dirt down into it. You're blowing it off. You don't want to be like that if you have to. And then, I blow through here. So there. So we put the air filter on. Hooks in. What I'm going to do, it is marked high and low. So they're back to basically where they are. I may have to touch the low adjustment, but mainly I'm going to have to touch the high adjustment because I'm going to have to adjust it. So what I'm going to do is once I get it running and have it wide open, you screw it in till it runs a bit rough. You screw it out slowly till it runs rough. You figure out where the middle is and you kind of put it to the middle, and then it's adjusted right. This is how I do it. Maybe other people aren't going to agree with that or what, but this has worked for me for years and we have had no problems. So, okay, we're gonna put this on. We got the choke on. And when I do the high speed, I have it rev full up and it's hot saw. And I adjust out till it starts to run rough. I adjust it in till it starts to run rough. I bring it to the middle and then I adjust it out normally just a little bit until I hear it have a little bit of a sputter. So I know that it's running just a hair rich. That's what I do. It just gives me a little peace of mind that the saw isn't running too lean. When I adjust the low speed jet, I adjust out the screw until it starts to run a little rough. I bring it in till it starts to run rough, but you got to do it really slowly. And then I bring it out to about halfway, but you always go to the richer a little bit.